Hello, hello to everybody out there uh, in, uh, let's see these messages here. I'm Dave Kassler. My call sign is KE0OG, and I'm an amateur extra, and this is my adjunct channel. My videos and Ask Dave are on my YouTube channel, regular YouTube channel, at, let's see, YouTube/user/ Dave Kassler should get you there, or just YouTube/Dave Kassler should get you there. It's good to meet all of you this beautiful Saturday. We are finally getting spring here. The tulips are up, the grass is green. A lot of the trees are leafing out. They're leafing out about 2 weeks early. So we're having a bit of an early spring here. We had a very snowy winter, so there will be lots of runoff when the time comes. Greetings to Augies from all over the world. Um, and let's see, some suggestions people are giving about NVIS. NVIS stands for Near Vertical Incidence Propagation. It's a very interesting form of propagation that makes it useful for fairly reliable HF communications fairly in close on 80, 60, and 40 meters. Okay. Greetings to all from the east part of the Netherlands, where most of the country is still celebrating Queen's Day. Okay. Central Wisconsin, off-center fed dipole. That would work also as an NVIS antenna on 80. The thing about putting up a low dipole on 80, even if you put it up 30 feet high, and then you, if it's an off-center fed dipole, you can feed that with, on any different band with a tuner, and it'll work as a regular good DX antenna on the upper bands. In the lower bands, it's really too low to do much DX, but it makes it great for NVIS. NVIS is a very interesting propagation method. Okay. We have questions. Let's see if we have any answers. First of all, I did turn up the microphone gain a little bit on this. I'm using the Fine microphone that I tested a couple weeks ago. It's actually sitting right there, right just off the screen, and we'll give that a try and see how well that does. So I'd be again interested in audio reports. I had some people complain last week that the volume was so low that even if they turned it all the way up in their mobile phones, they couldn't hear it very well. This first question actually comes via a comment on YouTube. Normally I reply to those directly, and I will to this. This is from Craig Gilbreth, and he says, have you had a chance to make the repair on the hex beam yet? No, I have not. What I need is good weather, which is easy to come by right now, and a couple pretty sturdy fellows. The antenna is up on top of a 20-foot aluminum pole, a pretty thick aluminum pole, and it needs to be tilted down. The base is fastened down, so it can be tilted down, and I need to tilt it down enough that I can get at that one thing, the support rope that slipped off, and slip it back in and then tilt it back up, and I'll have everything in good shape. All I'm looking for are the strong bodies who can do that. I certainly can't. I'm getting good audio reports. Okay, great. Thank you. So, Craig, no, I have not done that. He also wants me to measure the feed mechanism on that, the gauge of the wires and how far they are apart, which will immediately tell you the impedance of that feed point. The antenna feeds quite well. It is electrically a fan dipole, but it works quite well. Make or buy an Arrow 2 Yagi for 2 meters and 70 centimeters. You can make those fairly easily. They're not big. I think that the Arrow antenna designs aren't terribly expensive either, and they're very sturdy. The Arrow antenna, at least the one I've got, the elements are solid aluminum tubes. They're not hollow, and they're pretty sturdy. I've had this antenna probably now 20 years, and it's what I use for 2 meters because I live so far away from the repeaters. However, that's 2 meter only. I also have a 10 element 70 centimeter Yagi, which is really only about that big. And that works really well for the DMR repeater up in Grand Junction. Now, there are 2 ways you can get a vertical antenna for 2 bands. You can have them collinear with each other. In other words, both vertically polarized, and that is what you would do for FM work. You could use it on either band to do it for FM. If you're going to do it for satellite, they give you one that's cross-polarized, and you can hold it by hand and turn the polarization for best signal while you're doing satellite work. So if you're going to put something up outside just to do FM work, don't get the cross-polarized one. Get the one that's vertically polarized on both bands. This one is from Dave Green, KC2BLF. He asked earlier in an earlier show if I would show how to use a field strength meter. Well, as it turns out, since I got that email, in QST there was a review of a field strength meter from QRP Guys, theqrpguys.com or whatever it is. And anyway, I ordered one. It was $35 with shipping. It's on its way, and when it gets here, I'm going to do a whole bunch of experiments with it, including putting it up on my drone and see if I can get any kind of reports that way. Because, the problem with an antenna, even when a vertical that's ground mounted, you get out away from it and the elevation pattern starts to go up. And you may not hear it so well. The elevation pattern is up. So like if you're a half mile away from it, you may not hear it at all. Let's see. Use rain gutter coax fed. Got good reports. Want to work satellites with the HT. It's actually not that hard from what I understand. I've never done it, but I know people who have. I've read that you can use an off-center fed dipole multiband antenna. Yes, I have worked lots of people who have them and swear by them. They're available from MFJ, or you can easily make one yourself. If I apply for a vanity call as a general, do I keep it if I upgrade to extra? Yes, if you want to. Yes, absolutely. Be sure you don't check the box for an updated call sign. From Nebraska, from Tom Keaty, catching me live. Hello. Okay, this is from Jeff Wittern, KE0KRO. And he says, have a question. I purchased a Tram Land mobile glass mount dual band 150 to 154, 450 to 470 megahertz glass mounting antenna model 1192. I believe that antenna is designed for scanner reception. I want to mount it on the window of my office for 2 meters 70 centimeter. The question that I have is that the window is a it's a pair of windows, 2 windows, 2 pieces of glass and an air gap. Do you think I will have to increase the capacitance with the 2 metal plates between each glass to get a correct dipole? Yes, rather substantially, in fact. And if so, how big do you think the plates need to be? And he's got a link to the actual antenna. The problem with doing that capacitance type mounting is that it assumes the plates are pretty close together. It should be just a little bit, but those double pane windows can be like that. So you're probably going to have to go 4 to 8 times the surface area, maybe more, to get the capacitive effect to work. I would take a look. There are formulas in the handbook. to determine capacitance based on plate size and separation and the dielectric constant. And you can take a look at those to get a more exact number, because a small movement apart will dramatically reduce the capacitance. So I don't want to say it won't work, but I think you're going to have trouble making it work through double paned window. It would be best if you could get a regular outdoor antenna or something up on the roof. I know your circumstances may limit you to doing this, but I would think it'd have to be very substantially larger. Check those formulas, but I think it might go up as the square of the distance, or go down as the square. You can check it. Yes, you can determine the capacitance of a capacitor through measurements pretty accurately. Now here's a question about a transmitting oddity from Devon Halley. I enjoy learning from your videos. On September 25th, 2018, I was calling CQ in 75 meters at 3935 at about 8 p.m. PST. Okay, that was about the vernal equinox. Okay. Heard what I thought was a reply, but it was received at 39347. Okay, as it turned out, it was my own original CQ from 4 minutes 30 seconds earlier. The signal was somewhat diminished but easily understandable. It has been bugging me ever since, and was wondering if maybe someone was recording then retransmitting my Q, so I doubt it. I've read a little on ion acoustic wave propagation, but I am still a little lost as to why this would happen. Any insight into the strangeness? Thank you so much, D. Hall. What you are hearing, Devin, is something called a long-delayed echo. It is well documented that long-delayed echoes happen. You send something out there, it comes back, and you mention on a slightly different frequency even, which would imply a serious Doppler effect. I am going to brand this particular episode as a long-delayed echo. It's a well-documented phenomenon, and nobody knows why. The scientists don't know why. It bugs them. Here's an opportunity to do a little citizen science. But look up on Wikipedia or on the internet for long-delayed echoes. And somehow, it takes 1/7 of a second for your signal to circle the Earth. So what would have to have happened here to get the echo you're talking about is kind of going around the Earth several times, or some other pattern. People really don't have good explanations for long-delayed echoes, but that's what you experience. That's pretty cool. You're one of not very many people who has experienced that. Yeah, this one's a little bit on the long side. We'll see if we can't get it down just a little bit. Let's see what else we've got. I've heard about the new QSX QRP radio coming out in the future, and if so, what do I think about it? I'll be one of the first to order it. I'll tell you that. I love the little QCX radio. The QSX radio, what has happened is that Hans has fallen prey to what's called the second system effect. The second system effect means you make something that works really well. So in the second version of it, you try to fix everything that you couldn't get to with the first version. And you end up way over engineering, making it very difficult. And by the way, if you look up in Wikipedia, second system effect, you'll actually find an entry on there that defines this. It's an extremely common happening in the world of engineering, the so-called second system effect. And it's just, either the thing never gets built or somebody's got to step in and say, okay, shoot the engineer and build from the drawings. And that's the problem he's having. He's well over a year late on that thing. It's going to be a great radio. You went wrong when you went with tram. Well, I don't know. Hello, Dave Wallace. I'm making a 6-meter squello antenna, and we'll put it up about 22 feet using RG8 coax. Do I need a balun? Technically, you do, because the antenna is balanced. Feeding it with RG8 might be overkill. RG8X is much less expensive and works about as well. Ham shouldn't really be fooling with those glass mount antennas either. Oh, it's a different kind of antenna, and they do work in the right situations. So, hello from the Wisconsin Military Academy. Good to see you again. Let's see, Tampa, Larry, Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Recently got my extra ticket. Well, Larry, congratulations on that. And we will keep up the videos here. I've seen you log on to TAC 310 a few times. Called you, but you didn't answer, which is entirely possible. I had to set up a time on one of those talk groups just to have a little net. I'm from Northwest Wisconsin. Oh, okay. Fort McCoy is where that is. Alrighty. Okay. Now, this is somebody having a terrible time with a cobweb antenna. Let's see. The actions, how to proceed wire by wire, even an abbreviated wire by wire description. The instructions mention wrapping the wire, trimming the wire, folding the wire back on itself, centering the insulator, starting at 6 and 10 and work to 40. I usually work from the low up, but that's okay. Wrap to hold a loop wire through, eyelet around, allow excess to hang down, which I had to do on 40 meters, just wrapping it through the eyelets. It was still too short. You had to let some wire hang down. Above the band and below the band, wires too long or too short. I did not run into any cases where I had to shorten the wire so much it wouldn't attach to the little cross pieces. One wire affects another. Boy, does it. 18 inches hanging off the insulator seems a lot. All I can say is I'm sorry you're having trouble with it. Tune from the shack. Here's what I had to do when I did my HF9V, which is really touchy to tune, really touchy. I had to have my wife in the Radio Shack and with the meter, and then I didn't have working pair of 2-meter radios at the time, so we used our phones to do this. But she would read me the SWR. I'd make a change and then step away from the antenna about 10 feet and have her check the SWR again. And between the two of us, we homed in on the correct SWR very quickly. And I think you're going to have to do something like this, because the problem is that your the tuning on that thing's a little weird. So you want it to be checked with you 10 or so feet away from it, but you'd like to get that SWR from the shack. So have your wife or life partner or a friend or whoever else can give them a quick course in how to read the SWR from a meter. And then, especially one of the graphing meters like that one I just put together recently as a kit. Go back a few videos, there's a little antenna analyzer kit I put together that's very handy. I think that's about what you're going to have to do to get that thing there, is enlist the aid of another person who can sit in the shack. Because there's no point in tuning it outside and then attaching a piece of wire, because if the thing is off tune, the wire is going to act, the coax is going to act as an impedance transformer, so you'll get a different SWR in the shack. So give that a shot. I hope that'll work for you. I feel your frustration. That's kind of the same frustration I had with the octopus, but in that case, the problem was the snow. The antenna had to go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, several times to get that thing to work. Okay, this is from Trippy Brown, AC8S. So he's an extra. Just listen to your video about antennas for difficult situations, and you mentioned near the end about a ham who lived in an apartment and attached coils to a dipole he had up. Can you tell me who he is and what his call sign is? I don't know that I can. I need to talk to him. Here's why. I have a 24-foot balcony and have a dipole up and a 1-1 balun, but I only get so many bands because of the shortness of the dipole. I want to attach a coil to each leg of the dipole. You would put the coil right at the feed point. Okay, 14 gauge copper. That looks in house wire. Same gauge for the two coils. You can put the coil either right where it's fed, which is a good place, or out a little bit. And you're going to have to do a lot of experimentation. What you're doing is shortening the dipole by loading it. And when you do that, you'll be able to get a good SWR, but your 2-to-1 bandwidth will be narrower than it would be with the full-size dipole. Of course, even a full-size dipole on 80 meters will not cover 75, and vice versa. It's just too big a band. The problem is the ratio of the bandwidth of the band to the band frequency. And 3.5 to 4 megahertz out of 4 megahertz is a huge chunk of spectrum, and it's almost impossible to put together something that is a good SWR across the whole thing. And I wish I had a better answer for you, but you're going to load it, and you can get it up on any band that you want. But you'll be doing a lot of experimenting with the loading coils. Get like Schedule 40 pipe, 1 inch or 1.5 inch, and use that as your coil form. And then that's strong enough that you can attach the wires to either end and you won't pull it apart. And it acts as an air core coil, because there's some plastic in there, but not the whole thing. I have a question about, okay, this is from Mike Cormier, KC1JPY, has a question of how to tune or trim an Arrow J-pole. Oh, and he wants to use it for the railroad. This is the one about shortening it. Now, my overhead link works, I think. It does. So I'm going to move the microphone with me over here so I can show you something about that antenna. I'm going to draw it vertically because that's how most people do it. And you've got a short section down here, and you've got this up here. This is 1/4 wavelength, and this is 1/2 wavelength, and the whole thing from here to the crossbar is 3/4 wavelength. Okay, lambda being wavelength. Now he's got a 2 meter, which means it's probably tuned for around 146 megahertz. Now there are two things going on here. One is that this part down here is a transmission line. Okay, so 155 megahertz or whatever his frequency is, the transmission line will be shorter. You can use the frequency 468 divided by F equals 1/2 lambda. Multiply both sides by 2, and you can get and then put the frequency in there, which is 155. Okay, now remember this is in feet, and it takes into account the 0.95 velocity factor in the pipe. Okay. So if this is a quarter, you need to trim this for a quarter wavelength. You solve this for lambda. Find out what lambda is. Take a quarter of that. That's how long this section should be, down to here. And you'll have to trim this a certain amount. And then the thing is, that lowers the start of the half-wave dipole. So in doing so, by shortening that, you've actually lengthened this section. So you're going the wrong way. So you have to figure out what the half wavelength is from the formula here. And that'll start out, let me use a different color. That will start out down here. And so you're going to measure this until you have a half wavelength. So you'll actually cut off the top of that this amount of cut plus, which takes it down here, plus another one for up here. Okay? And that will give you a good SWR at the rail fanning frequencies. I hope that was reasonably clear. Okay, put the mic over here. I'm looking through the in your opinion, on a second floor balcony, which antenna you have reviewed, the MFJ Loop, Octopus, or whatever would work best? It's going to depend on your individual situation. MFJ makes a wire or a clamp that can go on your balcony railing, and it puts out a hamstick kind of thing, and then you have attached to it a counterpoise. Okay, that can be made to work if you have access to a little balcony. Okay, you can put that in there. I at one point was all excited about magnetic loop antennas, but the amount of tuning they require, and if you move just a little bit down the band, you've got to retune it. It drove me nuts using it. If it's all you've got and all you can do, by all means. Another thing you can do, if your landlord doesn't object, mount the loop. Let me go back to the board. Let's see, main overhead. Okay. Okay, so let's draw the side of the building, and you've got a little balcony with a rail like this. And this is inside the building, so you can come out here. The MFJ antenna, the one that's the balcony mount, mounts like this and comes out at an angle. And it's a hamstick. It's not very long. But then there's a counterpoise that you can kind of put on the floor in here. Just gives it something to work against. And that actually will work fairly well. It's only a single band, but you can always reach out and screw in a new hamstick for a different band. Now, if you're going to do a loop, let me draw another floor here. Okay, the loop can be mounted, kind of like this. Or you can mount that loop out here and make it horizontal. Now this will be visible from the ground. This is not necessarily visible. It's pretty small. This will be visible from the ground. If you do it horizontally, or you can do it vertical. Remember that when you look at the top of a loop, here, okay, we're looking down at the top of a loop. The radiation goes mostly this way. There's a great big gap. on either side of that loop where you're not going to be picking up much signal. And it occurs to me I didn't move the microphone when I did that, so it was probably hard to hear. Let's see. Mag loop. Expanded from 2 meters, the smallest SDR of the Hughes spectrum, but poor reception has got me placing ferrites indiscriminately with great improvement. Yeah. The Peanut app. I don't know about the Peanut app. Long-lived first caller thinking of building a vertical dipole for 20 meters attached to fiberglass pole. How would performance be affected if the feed line came down the vertical? It would be affected tremendously. One thing you can do is if you've got a vertical pole that's aluminum, and then you've got like a fiberglass insert to separate it from the top, is run the feed wire down through the tube to the ground, because the antenna is radiating from the outside. And this is called a collinear kind of thing, and it will give you better results than running that coax on the outside of it. Yeah, penthouse, there you go. Okay, good. Greetings from Rhode Island. The cobweb, it has to be at the height you are using it, or the SWR will not be the same. Tune close to the ground. Also, as you said, feed makes big change in the tuning. It took me a full day to tune. Well, it took Julian and I hours, several hours. Obviously, we collapsed that for the video, and we didn't get it optimally tuned. We just showed that it could be tuned to be more optimal. Shout out my friend Nick Gertz. He loves you. Ooh, okay. Well, it's nice to be loved. Okay, so I hope this answers Mike's question on tuning that thing. Tune a little at a time and see what it does, because you want to come right down on it. And remember, when you move that J-pole to a new location, it's going to affect the tuning. So you want to get it close enough. Now, fairly high SWR, like 6 to 1 or something like that, is not so bad for receiving. And that's what you're doing. You're not transmitting on the railroad frequencies, you're listening. And just a quarter wave actually would do pretty good. Okay, this is from David Thompson. His license was just issued. He's AG7TX. He's now AG7TX and is looking forward to being an active operator. Well, David, congratulations, and we will see you on the air. On the air. Now, this is from Dave Slaughter, Slotter, and he sends this picture right here. Let's see. Top screen. No, top screen. There we go. That is Dave Slaughter wearing an OG shirt that he got from the merchandise that's on YouTube that's listed just below each video. And on the back, it also has the OG logo and says, "Ask me about ham radio." So, Dave, good deal. I hope you enjoy that shirt. Okay. And Dave is W3DJS. So, Dave, thanks for the picture. Thanks for buying the shirt. This one is from Preston Kavanaugh, W3KAV, and says, I'm now building an SDR transceiver, the MCHF. It's not one I've heard of. There are so many kits out there. I mean, you could build a new kit every week and never build the same kit twice, which is good. The end of the project will need an antenna. It says HF. I'm in a rental and face the usual limitations. If a 60-foot one random wire I can set up, thanks to the local amateur radio club, but I'm also interested in something I could keep on the porch. Since I'm focused on learning how things work, I'm mostly interested in receiving. Does that make a particular antenna pattern a natural choice? Your 60-foot random wire will, first of all, it's not, random wires are supposed to be longer than a full wavelength. So a 240-foot random wire for 80 meters, a 132 feet for 40 meters, and so on. But the thing is, if you're just receiving, that long wire antenna will work just fine. If you're going to transmit, you're going to need a tuner. And as I showed last week, all tuners, or most tuners, have on the back of them little screw terminals where you can connect either a long wire or ladder line to them. You can connect it to the long wire on that, and then you can tune that up so that you can transmit on that wire. One of the problems with long wires is that they transmit along their entire length, which means all the way down into your shack and into the tuner. So they are just an invitation for RFI. This is from Dave Harris, K7PDW. Okay. I was watching your second YouTube video on the Anytone D878UV, and you mentioned you wished the radio had a lower power setting so you did not broadcast outside your house. Here's a solution that the RES group uses to limit the range of HTs so we can use as intercoms. And he is suggesting a dummy load, getting a 1 or 2 watt non-inductive 50 ohms resistor, solder it to the connector, okay, which will work. And that's a very good idea, considering that I'm just reach out here, I'm touching my hotspot. So my DMR radio doesn't need to transmit very far. So thanks for the tip. You want to make sure it's not an inductive resistor. It's not wire wound, because that won't work at RF. 2 watt carbon resistor at 50 ohms or very close to 50 ohms would be fine. Thank you for the tip. Appreciate that, Dave. Okay. Yaesu 8900 on 6 meters. The Yaesu 8900 is a rig that has 4 bands on it. It has 70 centimeter, 2 meters, 6 meters, and 10 meters. FM only, okay? And apparently it can be programmed to do crossband repeating or something like that. How to program it on 6 meters. He says can do 8 meters, but not 6. Jerry, I'm sorry, I know nothing about it. Perhaps someone here who has one of these radios can come up with some ideas. I haven't really promoted that radio very much because there's almost no 10 meter FM work in the country, except maybe in some very heavily populated areas on the East Coast. I've never heard 6 meter FM either. They're in the band plan. There's slots for all of them. So if people would put them on the air and use them, I think good things would happen. Okay, this is from Volker DB6YC in Germany. I have found an instruction for how to build a spool antenna for 80 meters in Rothamel's antenna book, which I understand is in German. It is 1.85 meters long and probably requires radials, which I haven't got the room for. If it's 1.85 meters long, which is about 5 feet, it's more like these ham sticks that we've got out here. And if you're going to do it as it's going to have very narrow bandwidth, but it will work. Do you think you could mirror it down to build a vertical dipole? I mean, can I build one antenna upward and the same heading downward to build something like a vertical dipole? Yes, absolutely you can. Do you think it will work even for distances of about 50 to 100 kilometers? For distances for 50 to 100 kilometers, you don't want vertical polarization. You want horizontal polarization so that you can use NVIS. The antenna that you're describing is not that huge. You might be able to build it on something where you can rotate it so it's vertical and then rotate it back to be in a dipole configuration. This is very similar in concept to the MFJ Octopus antenna, where what they do on that is they take two ham sticks for the same band, attach them together, and feed it in the middle. And it makes for a dipole. It's a dipole configuration. However, it's very, very seriously loaded, and so has very narrow bandwidths on the channels that it's on. But if you have particular frequencies that you want to use, it's a good thing to do. Okay. I hope that would work, and Volker, you're going to be needing to do a lot of experimentation. This is from Ken Mixon. Okay. Ken Mixon, KC6WOK. It's from Saturday, April 20th, about a larger waterfall on the IC7300. I mentioned the N1MM software. The entire system is a computer connected to the radio through its USB connector using the latest N1MM logging software. I'll have to give that software a try. I haven't yet. The radio section, The waterfall appears at the bottom of the screen and acts much like SDR Uno as with SDR Play. You can actually point and click on the waterfall and it tunes the radio, allowing the mouse's center wheel to fine-tune the radio. I've used this for field day with great success, but it's best for a wow factor at a club meeting. Yeah, absolutely. You are absolutely right. The waterfall is addictive and can be a distraction. I do love my icons, but try not to be a devotee for bands. Thanks for being the voice of reason when it comes to superhets versus SDRs. What I said was that SDR radios are very, very good radios, but that super heterodyne radios can also be very, very good radios. It's like the crossover with any kind of technology from one thing to another. It takes a while. SDR is the way people will be going because it is less expensive to build the parts for the precision. SDR radios are analog up until the point where they do the analog to digital conversion so they can do all the filtering and stuff. And analog is analog, you know. We'd like to do it all digital. The 7300 does it almost all digital. It has a preamp before the A to D converter. And so, yeah, there will be a changeover. They'll all be SDRs at some point. You know, it's interesting. The QRP Labs QCX is an analog radio. However, it's not a super heterodyne. It is built along the same principles as a software-defined radio, with the exception of the fact that it's done with analog technology. It's kind of cool. Very nice radio, by the way. Okay, let's see. I will try to be the same voice when the members of my club ask for recommended radios. Kathy is his wife, KD6CAF. You remember them. They gave the aluminum poles to me at Quartzfest so I could test the Octopus. And those same poles are holding up the Octopus right now. Okay, he says he has started his own club, and this is the web page for his club. It's Go to Hams. It means get them on the air. And his focus in this new club that is in the area where he lives, they basically work with new hams, and they do a setup every Saturday, apparently, in a park or something, to where all these new hams can come and get on the air with hands-on mentoring while they're doing it. And then when they get their radios, they get hands-on mentoring when they're doing the thing. It's a really cool idea, and more clubs should do that. Yeah, I've said that many times. We need to get more people on HF. There we go. All right. They're not pushing brands and recommend going to one of the ham radio outlets locally. There's one in Sunnyvale. And get on the air with other rigs before making that investment. On another note, since we met you at Quartz Fest, we've created, okay, they had their own radio club. Okay, well, very good, and congratulations to them. They're great people. I met them, very generous, happy couple. It was just a very pleasant experience meeting those folks. And I'm sure that their club, this Go to Hams, helping hams get on the air and keeping the amateur radio community radioactive, I think is just absolutely a super idea. Many years ago, the real reason for local radio clubs was because the radio equipment was too expensive for individuals to acquire. And, only the rich people could afford their own stations. So clubs would set up club stations. And you could come in and sign up for time and sit down and operate the club station to your heart's content. And I remember when I was part of the Tampa Radio Club when I was in the Air Force, they had a club station. But then when the radios got much less expensive compared to people's incomes, then you could get that. My first real HF radio was a Yaesu FT201, which was out at the same time as the 101s. It didn't have 160 meters, though. And it cost $629 in 1975. So that would be several times that today. And the radios today are so much better than that radio, although it was a nice radio. And the radios have so many features. The actual price in terms of hours of wages for radios has dropped dramatically. And because it has done that, most clubs no longer have club stations. And so you don't get that emphasis on operating that you might with a club station. When I was at Brigham Young University, which is where I got my novice license, I used the club station. The university had generously funded a club station. They had Drake Twins. They had a TH6 DXX up on the roof of the Student Union building, which was 4 or 5 stories tall. And it was just a fabulous station, so that very poor people like myself could come in and operate a beautiful station anytime that we wanted to. It was a great club, by the way. I really enjoyed that club. This one's from David Harden, KJ4CMY. Says, you once said you were at Keesler Air Force Base in 1967 and that you were LDS. That's Mormon. Did you teach novice classes then? No, I did not. He was a young lieutenant with the first name, he said he thought it was a young lieutenant with the first name of Dave who taught the course. I don't remember teaching a course back then. I doubt I did. I had my own studies that I had to do. That was where I got my training as a radar systems officer. CW exam, yeah. Well, he says he's gotten relicensed in 2008, so that's 11 years ago. So he's had a chance to enjoy ham radio since then. Yeah, our club there, we did have a club station at Keesler, which was paid for by the Morale Welfare Office, whatever it was, and it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun. I put up a great big sign. I was a lieutenant, and so was immediately made the club vice president because the club was on a training base that mostly trained enlisted people, so there weren't very many officers there. But I went through training to do my radar and communications thing, and we just had a good time. We had an entire barracks building to ourselves, and a barracks building that wasn't being used anymore. We had the entire building for our club station, and it was so much fun. Now, having fun times is not in the past, it's still with us in the future. This is from KD7AI Vince. The fine, pronounced or spelled fine, sounds great, which is, by the way, the mic I'm using right now. Sennheiser was great, but the fine seems more punchy and easier for my old ears to read. Enjoyed the podcast as well as various other works. So that's from Vince. Thank you. This next one is from Richard Hibbert. We took the MFJ NFET antenna and played around. On ground with counterpoise, it was barely working on 40 meters. We removed the counterpoise and on-ground garbage. 3 feet at one location, it improved. And grounded, it was 40-20-10 with maybe a tweak on a YT100 tuner, but would not tune on 30 or 15. It's a matter of experimentation on the placement. You do need to pay attention to the RFI issue. Plan to test at 3/8 feet grounded and ungrounded, configuring going up 25 feet and down 10. This is that antenna that I did. It was from MFJ. It was their first attempt at an end-fed 80-meter antenna. Okay, so it had a little box with a 9-to-1 balun in it and had a place for a counterpoise and all of that thing like that. And I had a terrible time with it. And I contacted MFJ and they said, well, those suggestions we make in the manual are actually mandatory. And so I went out and redid it and it worked. But it was definitely designed for portable use because they wanted the balun box basically 3 or 4 feet off the ground. And you needed to be right there with it and not feed from the radio to the balun should be just 2 or 3 feet of coax. So it's designed for portable use. And as a portable antenna works fairly well. As an antenna to use in a base station, it does not. Okay, now I'm going to go back up here and we'll see what we can do. Oh, wow. I've missed a lot. Woo! It's been busy. Okay. Recently got an extra ticket for Lawrence Patterson. Linwood Campbell, hello there. Barnacle Brad. DMR Net, we'll have to do something about that. What do I think about peanuts? Love to eat peanuts. I don't know about peanut antennas. Rhode Island. Cobweb has to be the same height. You are using your SWR will not be the same when tuned close to the ground. True, and that's why we would take it up to full height, test it, and then bring it down and make adjustments. Thought about running the coax inside. Okay. Dave You ought to get on TIRN, all bunch of hams and none amateur operators, called the Guild Bunch. Sorry, I don't quite get that. Suggestion for the apparel on the shirts, a sepia-esque diagram of the rhombus with my logo. That would be a fun shirt. I'll talk to Julian. He's the one who actually has been designing a lot of this stuff. Any practical technique to reduce QRM on a vertical 40-meter antenna? Make sure the antenna is well grounded, your station is well grounded, and make sure the coax is grounded via a lightning arrestor right at the ground rod before it enters your shack. That's what helped me. How am I doing today? My back went out, so I had to get my cane out. It'll be better in a few days. It's just, my back does that to me. It takes the most inopportune moment and goes out. And it was terrible what I was doing at the time. I was leaning over to pick up dishes out of the dishwasher to put them away when someone threw a javelin in my back. And my wife ended up having to empty the dishwasher. Here's a Stephen Kaiser. Just got back from passing my tech and general exams. Stephen, congratulations to you. And this most recent video I did was one about surveying the marketplace for HF rigs, for new rigs, if you want new rigs. That's something that you can do. Let's see. That one definitely we are going to hide that one. Okay. Congrats. A lot of congratulations to him. Oops. Okay. I just deleted somebody who was putting some messages up that shouldn't have been there. It's from VW7IBB in Utah. There's one you missed that is now shipping, the ASU, the FTDX 101D. I did not put that up there. It's brand new. I wasn't sure whether it was selling in the U.S. yet. It's been in QST for over a year. I saw it last year at Dayton. I was at Dayton and saw the new radio. It's going to be a fabulous new radio. It'll probably be their new flagship. But I didn't put it in there because it's not selling widely yet. Let's see. Oops. This thing keeps jumping around on me. It's selling for $4,000. Will compete with the Kenwood TS890S. Okay, looking forward. Yes, my next video is going to be about the 7300. It's sitting right here. I'm touching it. First HF rig was an Ancient Galaxy. Yes. Bringing back memories. Got a picture in your uniform to show us. Oh my goodness. I weighed about half what I weigh now. That was a long time ago. I got out of the Air Force in 1980. So that's better part of 40 years ago. Greetings from Copenhagen. When will I review the ICOM 7300? This coming week. I'll get started. I'm going to do more than one video on it. Looked up your old Yaesu FT201 that it had a heater switch. The purpose of the heater switch was the heaters in the tubes. The 201 had a tube driver and two tubes as push-pull final amplifiers. Nice radio. I've got a similar radio, which is actually a better radio, the FT101B, sitting in my closet, which also, of course, has the heater. The reason you'd leave the heaters off is if you're just going to be listening. That's why. Okay. Thanks for the kind words about Kathy and I. Well, good. Glad to hear you listening. Back problems are a pain. Yes, quite literally. And that's from David Harden, who sent in one of the questions today. Don DeGidio Heater switch, yes. Okay, is it possible to say Marv has a small quarry? I don't know. From Bill Lynch, will I be at Xenia this year? You know, my wife and I are trading up on a trailer. The trailer we had last year was a little too small. We're going to be getting a bigger trailer, not very much bigger, very similar floor plan. But in addition to the dinette, there's also a couch, which we sorely missed. And the current trailer we have, we're going to do this trade on Tuesday. The current trailer we have, the only place to sit is at the dinette. And it's a really kind of hard place to sit for any length of time. So this one will have a couch. And the couch also folds into a bed, but we don't need it. So I told my wife we ought to go to Xenia again. And she keeps asking, now, when is Dayton again? It's the end of next month. Well, that'd be fun to do that. Okay, let's go back here. This is from, oh, dear. We're out of time. I used to direct the Ouray County Chorus as a community choir. It had like 30 people in it when I directed it. And I made it a practice. We started precisely at 7 o'clock. It didn't matter if people were in their seats or not. We started at 7 o'clock. And at 8:30, it didn't even matter if we were in the middle of a phrase. That was it. Close the meeting. And you know what? We never needed any extra rehearsals. And we had sellout shows. And part of the reason is if you start on time, people will be there on time. If you don't start on time, people will be late. Okay. Can you listen to DMR using only a computer and a hotspot? If you have the hotspot and your computer, you can listen. But you would listen to talk groups, not to individual repeaters. A little, yeah, I'll have to do a video kind of explaining more about that. All right. Well, let's see. I should mention that you can go to dcasler.com/support and find various ways of financially supporting this channel. I appreciate it very much, all those who are able to do that. But I want to remind everybody, if you can't, don't feel bad about that, because what I put out there is knowledge for free. I want everybody to have the opportunity to do this. You can check my YouTube channel at YouTube/Dave Casler. I think David Casler also works. They can't decide which one they're going to use for me. I've been wanting to change the title of the channel from the formal title of my channel is David Casler. I'd like to change that to Ham Radio Answers. But every time I look at how to do that, I end up having to change my entire Gmail account. So it's weird. It's weird. All right. So let's see. That one we can show. Some of the comments come up. I have to moderate them. So let's see. Until we next meet, 73.